I used to hate survival games. The concept was always interesting to me, this idea of escapism. Day jobs, bills, careers, expectations, all of it gone. Pressures of our own world fade away and leave us to do... Well, what do you actually do in a survival game? At the most basic level, you fill gauges, right? First, hunger, sleep, morale, warmth, health. It is a constant struggle based around time, where you have to plan every move to make sure you're not only filling them for today, but for tomorrow as well. And I think that's where my main issue with these games seems to stem from. I can't really invest myself in the life of my character because every single run feels the same. It becomes a numbers game, and it doesn't matter at all if I die and lose my progress because I know the next run will be the exact same. Even within a run, it never felt like I was working towards anything. So while I love this romantic notion of survival games, in practice I'd always get bored and give up. That is until I played The Long Dark. The premise on the surface is the same. An electromagnetic storm knocks out the power grids of the entire world, and you are left to fend for yourself in the abandoned Canadian wilderness. You keep warm, eat, drink, hunt for things smaller than you, and avoid the ones that are bigger. Even more so, it is purist when it comes to survival. There is no meta progression, no storyline within this mode, nothing to work towards. For me, it had disappointment written all over it. But it wasn't, I loved it. It may even be one of the games that stuck around with me for the longest, that's why I'm talking about it, all because of one single mechanic. When selecting your difficulty setting, you can create a custom one. The game gives you a lot of values to play with, but among them is time scale. This is essentially the length of days. By default, days are purposely short, about 2 hours, and they don't give you a second to waste if you want to survive. I turned this up, all the way up. My days were 8 hours long. So what happened? You could say the game fell apart. The stress of survival went away, and while I was still conscious of all the things I needed to do, it didn't feel as much of a burden. And yet I felt more alive in this peaceful, relaxing romp through the Canadian wilderness than before. Hunting took longer. I rarely bothered before. When scavenging took far less time in the early game, it left hunting quote-unquote useless. But now hunts were an event. I prepared for them a day in advance, cleaning my rifle and counting my bullets, so that I could wake at first break of dawn and head out. Working my way through the clearings, I knew I may find some game in. Despite the extra time, it wasn't all easier. Diseases and injuries stuck around for much longer because of that increased timescale. And what may have been a small sprain that would take an hour to fix now dominated a good part of my playthrough. Most of all, my favorite consequence of breaking the game like this was the spare time I had left over. In the default game, there really never is a second to waste. Get busy living or get busy dying. But here I was faced with sometimes an entire hour of nothing to do, whether that's because I was waiting for food to cook or the sun to rise. Because the game forced me to slow down and wait, I had time to roleplay. I wasn't just surviving, I was living. What before was a house I sprinted through to ransack for loot was now an environmental story for me to explore. My home base was more important too. I would spend only a minute within my chosen home before running off on another errand, throwing all my items into a single cupboard for convenience. Not anymore. Day 1 did feel different to day 100 now, because I had the time to organize my space, and thus I could visually see the story of my character. When the going was good, the house was filled with food and light, and when it wasn't, well, it wasn't. The game features a tagging system used to keep track of places on the map for you. If you play The Long Dark a lot, chances are you barely use it because you remember everything off by heart. But now, with a spare hour and a surplus of spray paint, I decided to get creative.
I used to think that the day would never come. I'd see the light in the shade of the morning sun. My morning sun is the drug that brings me near to the childhood I lost, replaced by fear. I used to think that the day would never come, that my life would depend on the morning sun.
You may think, okay, fine, you took away the challenge and started to have more fun. And sure, that may be part of the reason, but I think there's something bigger going on here. I knew there had to be, and I found my answer trying this in Fallout 4. The Fallout 4 survival mode was something I bounced off at first too. Same reasons, cool concept, tedious execution, especially considering how often it would get in the way of the parts of the game I actually wanted to play, like combat and quests. But this all changed when I edited the timescale, and it changed in a dramatic way. Whereas having more time in The Long Dark made me feel like I lived in the setting, having more time in Fallout 4 made me feel like I actually existed. Every quest had more weight. Before, when the game offered me a choice, my options were only a quick fast travel away. But now I had sometimes hours to contemplate my decision as I traveled, to consider them more deeply, to change my mind. More time also resulted in me following through on stories after the fact. The regular game shepherds you from quest to quest as fast as it can, to make sure you're never bored, so you never have time to think about a previous quest because the next one is already being told to you. It's probably the most evident with our protagonist's dead spouse, which culminates in a single line of grieving dialogue and is completely forgotten about afterwards. But now I did have time to remember. And before I went on to explore this world, I took the time to roleplay burying them, overlooking the home we used to live in. The game never told me to do this, and it never acknowledged that I did. But I had the time, and it felt so much more meaningful to do so. I left a mark on the world. That's what it's all really about, leaving a mark. Fallout 4 wasn't just a game map anymore, it was a genuine world. So I left home and hit the road. Making camp where I could, over overpasses or by the byways. I'd find an abandoned church and I'd set myself up, barricading the doors, shielding the windows so no one could see my campfire. Nothing but a quiet radio to keep me company. Fallout 4 wasn't just a game map, it was a world I knew like the back of my hand. One I built a network of hideouts and safe houses in to aid my survival. Combat in survival mode is much harder too. The enemies can one-shot me, but I can also one-shot them. By default, this is pretty tedious and results in a lot of deaths that feel unfair. But now I had the time to prepare to create an advantage. Alongside my hideouts, I built ambushes on major roads or near bandit camps. Hid my turrets in bushes and traps along roads. I set up vantage points where I could haul up and wait. There was time to do all this. All these survival concepts that sounded so cool in theory finally worked, and because of that I could have a real progression. Living in buses was never going to be sustainable. I needed a permanent home, and so I built one. I converted a petrol station into a hidden safe house. There's a space for my dog, a humble interior crop farm, barricaded doors and shuttered windows to protect me. I even set up a workshop where I could tinker with my gear and plan my next move. The game never told me to make this, and for the first few hours I didn't. But when a radiation storm kept me inside for a whole evening, I had to find something to do. I left my mark on the wasteland in small ways, carving out a space for myself, leaving behind signs that I was here, that I was alive. But I left behind bigger marks too. This billboard, for example, which serves no practical purpose, but I really like the idea that another wasteland survivor would pass it by and feel a shred of human connection. I think my biggest project came to me when I cleared out an entire skyscraper of mutants that have been murdering people for years or even decades by now. It wasn't just another fight, it was a symbolic turning of the wind, a victory of humanity over this wasteland. And so I stayed up in that tower for a while and built a firework display on the roof overlooking Diamond City, the biggest human settlement in the game. It meant nothing mechanically, but I like to think that Diamond City and maybe the entire wasteland for miles around saw my message that the mutants are dead. A small, single, silent act of human defiance in this dead world. Everyone always enables these survival modes and even mods them into other games because they want to feel more immersed. The thinking is, if I had to eat and drink and sleep, it's as if I'm really living inside this world. But that's not true, and this whole experience taught me a lesson. One of the things I said before was that I wasn't just surviving, but I was living, and I think that's a very important distinction to make. People don't survive day to day their entire lives just to satisfy their basic needs over and over again. Surviving by itself is just an endless, meaningless struggle. That's how animals live. We don't just live, we need something to live for. All we are as individuals is the sum of our stories, the things we've done and made and experienced, the permanent ways we've changed the world and each other. I started enjoying these games more when I found something to live for, and I think it's the same with all of our lives. Of course, that takes time, but luckily we have more of it than we think. I have a song I really want to close this video out with, and I'm gonna play the full thing. There's nothing else to hear, but feel free to stay a while and close the tab out when you're ready. The world will wait.